I never truly understood the value of my life until the day I met death. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, as so many life-changing events often do. I was driving home from work, mindlessly going over the errands I needed to run, the emails I had yet to respond to, the petty worries that filled my day. The sun was dipping low, and its glare peeked through the trees lining the road. I remember fiddling with the radio, trying to find a song that wasn't interrupted by static. That's when I missed the stop sign. In a single heartbeat, everything changed. I recall a sudden blaring horn, the screech of tires. I looked up to see a flash of red, another car, far too close, coming far too fast. There was no time to react, barely even time to gasp. The impact was thunderous. Metal crunched and glass shattered. My body jolted violently as the world spun. I felt an immense force slam me back, then fling me forward. The seatbelt cut into my shoulder, a sharp pain, and then nothing. I must have lost consciousness, because the next thing I remember was a surreal calm. I found myself standing, or perhaps floating, beside the wreckage of my car. Smoke curled up from the crumpled hood. The other vehicle was overturned a few yards away. For a moment, I didn't realize I was looking at my own body, slumped against the steering wheel, blood seeping from a cut on my forehead. People were running toward the scene. Someone shouted for an ambulance. It was all oddly quiet to me, as if the chaos was muffled by a thick pane of glass. I felt no pain, just a detached sense of observation. That's when I noticed I wasn't alone. Beside me stood a figure cloaked in shadow, tall and still. My heart, or whatever was left of me in that state, lurched. I didn't need to ask who it was. Some part of me simply knew. The figure's face was not visible under the hooded cloak, but I could feel eyes upon me, ancient and patient. "Am I dead?" I asked, my voice echoing strangely, as if underwater. The cloaked figure tilted its head slightly. The answer came not in words, but I understood nonetheless. Not quite. Not yet. I should have been terrified, but in that suspended moment, I felt oddly at ease, perhaps a combination of shock and the otherworldly calm that enveloped me. I turned my attention back to the scene. Paramedics had arrived, moving efficiently. I watched as they pried open my car door with metal tools. They were shouting things I couldn't make out. My body was limp as they carefully pulled me out and laid me on the ground. One EMT checked my pulse and pupils, another was preparing a syringe. I realized with a start that they were trying to save me. I was hovering between life and death, literally watching it happen. A surge of emotion washed through me, a mix of fear and sorrow. I wasn't ready to die. There was so much that I had left unfinished, so much I'd taken for granted. I thought of my wife, how we had argued that morning over something trivial. I couldn't even remember what. I thought of my mother, who I hadn't called in weeks, my little brother, who I promised I'd visit soon, all the people I loved, and all the things I'd said I'd do later. I might not have a later now. Regret pierced through me sharper than any glass or steel. The dark figure beside me seemed to sense my thoughts. Though I still couldn't see a face, I felt a gentle, almost compassionate presence. We stood together silently as the medics fought to pull me back. It was a strange feeling, watching your potential death, completely aware of the fragility of your existence. I turned to the figure and found my voice again. "Is this it?" I asked quietly. "Is it my time?" There was a pause, as if the question hung in the air between us. Then, to my surprise, the figure spoke. The voice was neither male nor female, but it resonated in my mind with a calm clarity. "That depends," it said. "On what?" I asked, hardly believing I was having a conversation with death itself. The figure's answer was gentle. "On whether you've learned what you need to learn." The cloaked form gestured towards the scene before us. Most people don't get the chance to watch their own life from this side. It tends to put things in perspective, doesn't it? I followed the gesture and saw what death saw. A frail human form, my body, pale and bleeding on the asphalt, strangers working frantically over it. The ambulance lights painted everything in urgent flashes of red and blue. It was sobering and heart-wrenching to witness. "Yes," I whispered. In that moment, I didn't care about the unanswered emails or the errands, or the trivial problems that had consumed my mind an hour ago. I cared about the people I loved, and whether I would ever get to hold them again. I cared about the things I'd never said or hadn't done. My life, viewed from this precarious ledge, suddenly seemed both incredibly precious and terribly wasted in parts. I felt tears, though I wasn't sure if in this form I had real tears. I was so busy living day to day, I never really lived, did I? I never appreciated it. My life, I mean. My words were tumbling out. I kept saying I'd do things later, fix things later. I assumed there'd always be more time. The hooded figure inclined its head. "Almost everyone does," it replied softly. "It's human nature to forget how fragile you are, to assume tomorrow awaits you until it doesn't." I looked at Death, an odd thing to do, really, and felt a sudden anger amid my sadness. "It's not fair," I found myself saying. I needed more time. I'm not ready. I wanted to fix things, to be better." The figure's presence remained calm, absorbing my words. "What would you do if you had more time?" it asked, not as a challenge, but as a genuine question. I opened my mouth and closed it again. The world around us seemed to slow even further, as if we were in a bubble outside of time. What would I do? So many things. "I'd go home and hug my wife and tell her I'm sorry for ever taking her for granted," I said. "I'd call my mom and tell her I love her. I'd actually visit my brother like I promised. I wouldn't waste another weekend working late for a boss who wouldn't blink if I disappeared. I'd take that trip we planned and kept postponing. I'd watch the sunrise more often. I'd try to be the kind of person I always thought I would be, someday." My voice cracked. I just don't want to go without doing those things, without saying goodbye, without saying thank you. I looked back at my body on the ground. They had strapped me to a board, lifting me into the ambulance now. One medic was performing CPR. My chest looked so still. Death was silent for a long moment. I wondered if it was weighing my words, or if any of it even mattered. Perhaps everyone bargains like this at the end. Perhaps everyone thinks their unfinished business is reason enough for a second chance. Finally, the figure spoke quietly, almost in a whisper that echoed within me. "Sometimes," it said, "not getting what you want is a lesson too. But..." It trailed off, and I sensed something akin to kindness or pity emanating from that hood. "But perhaps, for you, there is more to do." Suddenly, the calm in the air shifted. I heard one of the paramedics shout, "He's breathing. We've got a pulse." The figure beside me stepped back. I turned to it in astonishment. It felt as though an invisible thread tethering me to this shadow realm was tightening, pulling me back toward life. The scene around us grew brighter, sounds sharpened. A dull ache crept into my awareness. Pain, I realized. Pain and gravity, pulling me back into my broken body. I looked at Death one last time. "Will I see you again?" I asked haltingly. The hooded face seemed to study me. "One day, yes," it replied. Matter of fact, but not unkind. "Everyone sees me eventually." I swallowed, trying to accept that truth. There was no malice in its voice, just inevitability. "But not today," it added. And though I could not see a face, I sensed a gentle smile. "Remember this feeling," Death said, as a final gift. Remember what you promised to do with more time. Live well. Until we meet again." In a blink, everything rushed back. I gasped as I felt air flood my lungs. My eyes fluttered open to bright lights glaring down. The pain hit me all at once, searing and sharp. I groaned, and a chorus of urgent, relieved voices surrounded me. "He's back," someone said, heart rate stabilizing. I was in the ambulance. I could feel the rumble of the engine, hear the siren wail. My body hurt everywhere, but I was alive. Tears of pain and gratitude slipped out of the corners of my eyes. I managed to turn my head just a fraction, and through the small back window of the ambulance door, I caught a glimpse of the accident scene receding. For an instant, I saw a dark figure standing on the roadside watching the ambulance drive away. I blinked and it was gone. Perhaps it was a trick of the light, or my injured mind, but I chose to believe it was real. They say near-death experiences can be hallucinations, the brain's way of coping with extreme trauma. Maybe that's true, but what I experienced felt as real as any other part of my life. And the lessons I learned in those minutes between life and death were seared into me like a brand. It took months to recover from the accident. Broken bones healed, stitches dissolved, scars formed. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was in my outlook. I did exactly what I told death I would do. When I was well enough, I held my wife and told her how much I loved her, how sorry I was for ever losing sight of what we had. I called my mother every single day until she probably got sick of me just a little. I visited my brother, and we finally took that fishing trip together like when we were kids. I watched a sunrise every chance I got, often with a steaming cup of coffee and my hand in my wife's. We even booked those tickets to the destination we'd been dreaming of, and together we marveled at how wide and beautiful the world is. I returned to work, but with a different mindset. I set boundaries and refused to let it consume me. In fact, eventually I changed jobs to have more time for life outside the office. I found myself cherishing the small moments, walking in the park on a crisp morning, laughing at an old joke with a friend, even grocery shopping with my wife on a lazy Sunday. Things I used to rush through or grumble about became reminders that I was still here to experience them. I also carried with me an awareness of the fragility of it all. I had been given a second chance, but I knew not everyone gets that. Any day could be the day I meet death again for the final time, hopefully many years down the line, but one never knows. The difference now is that I no longer push that fact aside. Instead, I let it motivate me. There's an old Latin saying, memento mori, which means remember that you must die. Far from being morbid, I found it's actually a call to truly live. Knowing that one day I will die makes me appreciate living so much more. These days, I often find myself pausing to really take in the moments that would have slipped by before. I don't scroll mindlessly on my phone as much, or lose myself in pointless worries. I try to be truly present, whether I'm having a conversation, eating a meal, or just sitting quietly listening to my own breath. Life is happening now, and I don't want to miss it. Sometimes, late at night, I'll wake up and just listen to the sound of my wife's gentle breathing beside me, and I'll feel a swell of gratitude so profound it brings tears to my eyes. That gratitude is a constant companion for me now. I am grateful for the chance to still be here, to still have time to become the person I want to be, to love the people I love. The day I met death, I learned how to live. It's a lesson written in scars and memories, one I carry in my bones. One day, when it is truly my time, I hope I will meet that dark, gentle figure again, and I will be able to say, I used the time you gave me well. Until then, I am living the life I almost lost, living it with purpose, with love, and with the awareness that every single second is a gift, and I do not intend to waste a single one of them